Hi, my name is Alicia Bake, and I'm a professional voice actor. And I want to talk about what my first setup looked like and how that transitioned over the years that I've been doing voiceover. So, my first setup was me in my walk in closet. And I remember researching tape. I thought I could staple like egg carton mattresses because I had seen those bumpy things, acoustic panels, in people's studios pictures. And so I contemplated going to the store and buying egg crate mattresses and just stapling them to the walls. That's how little I knew. That doesn't work, just in case you're wondering. So my first microphone was a Rode NT1, not a Rode NT1A to be specific. And I bought the kit. So Rode sells a kit that comes with the Rode I think it's called AI1 or A1i interface, and the NT1 microphone. It came with a pop filter, and it came with I think that's it. I think it's pop filter, microphone, and interface. And I think it came with the mic cable or something. I don't know if I bought a mic cable. So I had a stand that I bought for $20 at Guitar Center. It was terrible. I had to wrap bean bags around the bottom of it to keep it from falling over. I don't recommend buying the $20 stand at Guitar Center. So I bought a stand, I bought a microphone, and I put my microphone with the fabric, the clothes behind the microphone to absorb the sound and keep it from reflecting back into the back of the microphone. And I got some pretty decent audio. It was all right. It wasn't the best. It's funny. I listen to it now and I'm like, whoa, that was terrible. But it really wasn't. It wasn't terrible. It was bookable. It sold, and it worked okay. But my children were below me all the time because the only room in the house that the TV is in is the living room, and the kitchen. The pathway between those two was right under my walk-in closet. So the kids were back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, getting snacks in the kitchen or running up the stairs and coming back down. And so I've mentioned before that I would stomp on the floor 3 times when I would record, and then when I was done, I'd stomp twice. I'm done. And they would be able to be noisy again. And then I would stomp 3 times and they would stop talking and making noise. And that was really exhausting for my children. So around January 2019, I think, we built me a studio in our house. So we went out we have a big bonus room, and we took the big bonus room, and in the corner of it, we built a space. And it was I think it was like 5 by 8, I want to say, somewhere around that range, maybe 5 by 10. And we built it by framing it out with wood, and we put rock wool insulation in it and thick drywall, 5/8 thick drywall across the whole thing. And then I built a little desk, and I had a mic mount, and it was great. I had a monitor in there. I took a cord, I drilled a hole through the wall to the room next to me, and my laptop would sit out there. So I had a monitor and a keyboard and mouse in the studio with me. And that setup was actually really great. I had a -60 noise floor. I recorded some great stuff in there. And then my neighbor cut down all the trees in between our houses. So we live out in the country, and we have 1.4 acres, plenty of space, but our neighbor is only about 50 feet from our house, and there was this little forest in between us with a bunch of trees, and apparently that was a really great sound buffer for the rest of the neighborhood and me. Well, when he chopped all those trees down, I suddenly had no sound buffer between my house and everything else, and I was on the second story. And so this wonderful man who's retired and loves his yard more than life mows his grass at least 2 days a week. And that's because he does one day where he uses a push mower around his entire acre property, all around the perimeter and around the house. And then he mows with his riding lawnmower the other day. And then he uses a leaf blower, and then he uses an aerator. And he's just always using lawn equipment. And I was doing a $4,000 job on a live session with a client, and I had to reschedule it because the neighbors were mowing their grass. And it wasn't even him. It was the neighbor 2 doors down, but it was so loud that the audio was just destroyed. It was just useless. And I was so frustrated by that we began researching other options. And so in April of 2021, we built me a studio, and it is a 12 by 12 building on my property. I call it, it's a shed, but it's not a shed. Um, it is double insulated. It has rock wool insulation. Sorry, not double insulated, but it has plywood on the outside for a thick, they'd put in a thick plywood instead of like vinyl siding that's really thin. So it's a thick plywood siding, and then rock wool insulation, and then the thick drywall. And then it's got acoustic panels and fabric sound reducing curtains hung over the window and over the AC unit. It has its own heat and AC unit because obviously it gets hot and cold in here. It's like the ice cave in the wintertime. And inside of that professional studio, I purchased and installed a studiobricks booth. And that was actually a journey in and of itself that I should mention, because we initially purchased the studiobricks and put it inside the house. I put it in my son's bedroom. He has a big bedroom, and he was fine. He's a teenager. He was fine with it in there. And but every time I moved, even a little bit, like even just to shift my weight slightly from side to side, the whole studio bounced. So we thought that the floor of my house was perhaps unstable. They don't necessarily recommend them for a second story. So we moved it to another room. We put a thick piece of plywood under it. We bought foam mats we put under it, and still, even the slightest shift side to side was terrible. So we spent thousands of dollars building this studio space, which is set up to sing in or to record. I could record. It's quiet enough for the most part. If no one was mowing their grass or working outside, I could record in the exterior studio space as well, which is really nice. I love to sing, and my family sings, and so. But it's set up with a desk and a beanbag for the kids to hang out there when I'm working. But we brought the studiobricks out here, and we disassembled and reassembled it for like the 5th time. And they are a lot of work. I'll just tell you, if anybody buys a studiobricks booth, call me. I can tell you all the details of how to make it fast. But so we reassembled the studiobricks booth again, and I think this was actually the 4th time, and it still shook after thousands. And I leveled the floor myself. We made sure it was a stable, sturdy foundation. I installed the flooring myself. I did all the drywall work myself. Like I put in a lot of effort into this studio space, and it still shook. So I actually called studiobricks, and they connected me with the guy that began, the owner, Guillermo, I think is his name. He was amazing. And it turned out that the floor of my studiobricks booth was warped. So we went through this whole journey, and the floor was warped. So they sent me a new floor and a new way. They created a mat for me to put it on instead of the legs. And finally, I can jump back and forth, and my mic barely, like, if I really work hard, it'll slightly wiggle, but it's in a shock mount, so you really can't tell in my audio. So, yeah, this has been quite the journey. So we had to disassemble it. Actually, they initially thought it was the feet, so we disassembled it, put on new feet, reassembled it. The feet did not solve the problem. We disassembled it and put the new floor in when they sent it. So we've really spent a lot of time on this studio, but it's pristine. It's amazing, and it gives me a space that I can work in that is away from everyone, and I earned the money to pay for it all last year. So it was something that I did not, you talk about, anybody who begins a business talks about investing back into the business, and that is how I invested back into my business. So the second part of the question was, how did you know when that you needed to upgrade your studio? So for me, it was when it no longer worked. And the reasons were for a variety of reasons. The first one, I couldn't afford anything else, right? Like I couldn't afford anything but my walk-in closet. When I had earned enough money to pay for a new studio to be built and get away from the closet, we were able to build the closet. And then eventually it became that the closet was no longer functioning, that we could have probably done some things to it to help with the sound reduction, but it was just already a really small, cramped space, and it had an angled ceiling. And so we knew that for long term, we needed a different option. And so I would just say some people build their studio and they stay there forever, and it's fine. But situations change, and being flexible and recognizing that you need to maybe upgrade a little bit are important, being able to recognize that. The other aspect of my studio is my equipment, and I'll save that for another video because we're already at 10 minutes.